Good morning, everyone. Sorry we were a few minutes past our start time here, but ready to get started. And we appreciate you all giving us your time this morning. Uh, Today's topic is more about loan updates and a TWC overview. And we do have some guests with us this morning to also participate. So I'm going to go through my sort of initial spill, and then we'll get on to the question and answer session, which is what the most important part about this whole process is. Uh, Restating goals are to provide the updates on the EIDL, the SBA Advanced Loan Grant, the PPP program, the Debt Relief Program, SBA Express Bridge Loan, and then any local gap assistance. And currently, right now, the local gap assistance, many of the municipalities have begun to put together some loan programs to help the businesses in their community. A lot of our micro lenders, and that would be People Fund, Axion, Lift Fund, Big Austin. There are a lot of organizations, micro lenders out there that are trying to also play a role in providing gap funds. And we should shortly have a matrix that would help explain what their programs are and how to access them and what the limitations. All of them are looking to be taken out once you get into emergency funding. So if you receive your EIDL loan, then there's an expectation that you would take them out as the bridge lender, which is really what a bridge loan is all about. Our goal today is to listen to you all. So we want to hear about the challenges that each of you are facing, both procedural and situational. Now, I have been getting a lot of feedback on what those challenges look like, and we certainly are sympathetic to it. We can't address it all right now, but we will try to work towards that goal. And we need to hear back from you, because the things that we are not aware of, we can't address. And so for that, I'd like to shift to what our objectives today are, is to focus on solutions by starting with the facts as we know them, and to try to answer your questions the best that we can, and commitment that if we can't get to those questions or we can't answer those questions, because we simply don't have the answer, then we'll do our best to go out and get those answers and try to make those answers available to you. I'd like to start today with a few of the updates, some of the guidance changes that we see coming, particularly in the PPP application documentation. There was some conversation late last week I guess some yesterday as well, that we were talking about what the banks are having to go through to protect themselves so that they can remain in compliance with some of the statutes that they're governed by. Is the loan application process for the PPP has been somewhat simplified, but the documentation that backs it up, we may be requiring some additional documentation. There was some conversation about, well, how do you document your calculations for what your average monthly payroll was, and with that, it had more to do with 941 filings, and there was some confusion between, well, what if I haven't filed my first quarter 941 filings? And then they want the last 12 months, which do we mean the previous year or the previous 12 months? And under the PPP filings, or the PPP guidelines, they're looking for the last 12 months. So there's going to be a little bit of a conflict between what the bank's going to require and what the PPP has expressed in their guidance. So there's a little confusion. We're still trying to work around there. I would like to make sure that we kind of focus on a couple of things, and one is expectations. We talked before about expectations, and the challenge is that every service organization that's supporting the COVID response has a capacity problem. We mentioned that in prior disasters where we had, it was local or regional, we can just simply move resources from one part of the country to the other to increase that capacity. Well, right now, the whole country is in a disaster, so there's no available capacity anywhere else to pull from. And with that, our systems are overrun, and we can, all we can do is to try to onboard capacity as fast as we can. So we're going through this process. There's not a person involved in this process that does not getting phone calls from family and friends telling us that they're drowning and begging for help. Um, I get it all evening, all weekend, all day. I understand. We're trying to do everything that we possibly can, but we simply do have a capacity issue. And I know the questions come up that could we have foreseen this? Well, I think most of us did, but we were really powerless to do anything about it. We simply didn't have the capacity from the start, and onboarding capacity takes time. And so we're in this delay. We're in this period now where tensions are high, frustrations are high, response rates are low and are slow, and everyone is trying to work it out the best that we know how. And part of that is some of the things that we put together and how we're trying to manage this whole process. So I want to be clear with you all, and I want to be upfront with you all about what that management looks like. The SBDC's response protocols were updated immediately from the announcement that this was going to be launched. We try to keep our website update as close to real time as possible. And it's our goal to try to be as responsive as we can. Most of the advisors for the SBDC have tried to be as responsive to the emails, and sometimes we are trying to engage through the phone calls. But engaging phone calls is also a time-consuming process. So we're all limited in what we can do, but know that we are doing our best to respond as quickly as we can. I know the SBA has taken it on the chin. They've had to write and facilitate new rules. And when you think about how quickly this came about, and the process within the federal government to write and facilitate new rules is a challenge in and of itself. But they have managed to push a lot of that out. But now we're having to go back and address some of the gaps that once you push something out and you realize it's not working, you have to step back and figure out, well, why is it not working, and what do I need to do to change that? They're also trying to update their process capacity. They're trying to simplify the application process and make the accessibility to the application portals more available. And they're also doing onboarding of their process capacity. So we're not necessarily, we are behind, but we're not necessarily behind from a standpoint of reaction. We're just necessarily behind because of the simple timeline that we've had to work with. All of this now is less than a month old, and we're really trying to make the best of it. The timelines will be shifting. I will tell you that the advanced loans, many of you have been looking for these advanced loans to be released or awarded within 3 days, because that was sort of what was talked about in the beginning. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that push out to about a week. And again, it's a capacity issue. I don't see it being more of do I qualify or not. I think it's just a matter of how many people can actually manage how many applications in a given day, and how much of that can actually be automated. I know on the EIDL, we started out, conversation was going to be 3 to 4 weeks. Wouldn't be surprised, have not been told this, but wouldn't be surprised if it takes 5 to 6 weeks. I surely, when I heard 3 to 4 weeks in the beginning, I thought that was a bit aggressive. And so expectations is about creating something that's more realistic, and let's take a look at those timelines. challenges that the banks are having right now, it took a while to get the guidelines out for how the borrowers could use the money and how they could make application and that sort of thing. Well, we're still dealing with the guidelines from the bankers, from the lenders' perspective, as to how can they actually lend the money. And there are governance issues related to that because by statute, there are certain things that banks have to do. And so they're looking at what their governance issues are and trying to address that, get some relief from the federal government where they may be the potential for them to extend themselves. So they're trying to protect themselves. And also trying to put all their application protocols into play. Many of these banks just have not been set up to address this level of workload. And so they've been overrun. And I will say that some of them are really having to struggle with not just the application protocols, the applications themselves, and the processing. So there's a lot for them to work through to be ready to receive applications, and that's still an ongoing process. They've got to do not just have enough people for the applications, but they've got to do the loan reviews, and so the process capacity is challenged as well. So the timelines for for PPP loans is really more up to the individual lender. Once the individual lender has qualified the applicant and processed it to the SBA then can turn around, release the funds fairly quickly. I don't have a timeline on that, but I do know that it's that the bulk of the timeline involved in the whole process is going to be more in the application and processing part of the deal. So the results of what the banks are really dealing with right now is it's slowing down the rate of participation. So there are banks out there who have either chosen to limit their participation, and in which case they're only taking applications from their current banking relationships. There are banks out there who chose not to participate at all simply because they don't understand the risk and what it's going to mean to their banks. And there are some out there who have taken on the challenge, and taken on quite a few loans, but now find themselves overwhelmed and they're slowing their rate down just because of the capacity challenge in itself. So with that, I wanted to kind of shift a little bit and talk about, we know what it is that we're trying to do with where we are with the loans and that sort of thing, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what's after survival. So right now we're all in this sort of survival mode, and what is it that we need to be doing as a business, aside from making application, trying to see how we can get access to the money. One of the things I'd like to encourage you to do is there's an awful lot of free training online. And this is a good time for you to reinvest in your business, in yourself, and in your employees. So I'd like to encourage you to take a look at what you think your needs are going to be as a business when we start coming out of this. And spend a little bit of time today encouraging your employees and you yourself to reinvest and to look at online trainings that are going to make you a better employee, it's going to make you a more successful business, and take that on. Now I'd like to shift because we do have some guests today, and I want you to hear from them. When we open it up for questions, we'll do the best we can to answer those questions. But today from the Texas Workforce Commission, we have Mr. Paul Fletcher, the Executive Director of the Rural Capital Workforce Development Board. And we have Dr. Kara Ryan. She's the Chief Strategy Officer for Workforce Solutions Rural Capital Area. Welcome you all, and we're going to open it up right now for questions and see how we might be able to address those questions as we go forward. Kara, did you want, I guess maybe I should let either you or Paul Uh,
Paul,
introduce
do you want
yourself
to start?
there.
Sure, I'll start. So my name is Paul Fletcher. I'm the CEO for Workforce Solutions Rural Capital Area. We're one of 28 workforce boards in the state of Texas, and we represent the 9-county area that surrounds Travis County. So we're the donut that circles Travis County. Our organization is charged with working with employers to help them have the talent supply chain that they need to have the right resources in their business to make them be successful. Up until this event occurred, we were doing everything we could do to find enough people and train them with the right skills that were needed to run the businesses that were going on in our area. That focus has shifted a little bit in the last couple of weeks. Had a lot of layoffs. Unemployment has gone through the roof. I think TWC, which we are not actually the Workforce Commission, but we're a organization that works for, we're contracted with the Workforce Commission to provide these services. In a 5-week period, they processed more unemployment claims than they processed in all of calendar year 2019. The Workforce Commission is the authority that owns the data about unemployment, so they don't allow us to release that UI data specifically, but we work with everybody who is on unemployment to help them see what jobs are out there and immediately available. Just to give you a little bit of background on who we are and what we do. And I'm happy to answer any questions that we can.
Thank you, Paul. Carrie, anything you can add to that or would like to add to that?
Sure. I just want to add, you guys seem to be asking a lot of questions about that. So, I'm looking at the list of questions as they kind of pop up, and I'm seeing a lot of the PPP and EIDL grant information. And we do have to reiterate that we're not the organization that kind of specifies that on its own. But we do have business solutions consultants in each of our 9 counties that we do represent. And if you do have any questions and want to reach out to them, we can do our best to facilitate any conversation with the Economic Development and Tourism Office, with the Office of the Governor, and we can also do that with Commissioner Demerson's office. He is the Commissioner for Employers, and he has several employment officers, employment lawyers who can help out with answering some of these questions, because we're looking to gather as much gather as much information as possible and make sure it's distributed to the right people and really understand what kind of questions we need to be answering for our businesses. But I'll open it up. I'd prefer to answer questions as they come up as well. So let me know what I can answer.
Thank you. And we'll probably volley back and forth depending on the questions. So Francisca, would you start with the first question, please?
Sure. Since Wells Fargo has announced that they will stop taking application requests after April 5th and to seek PPP help at other banks, can we apply for the PPP with multiple banks and choose one once they get the funds?
Well, you can, but the challenge you're going to run into is each bank's going to have a different application form. So to get ready for that, you can use the form that's on our website. It's a somewhat generic PPP application form. It'll get you prepared because it'll help you with how to answer the questions and to help you document what documents you're going to need to have to support the questions that they're asked. But know that every time you go to a different bank, you're going to have the potential for having a different application form and maybe a different application process. And also know that all of the banks now are at a position where they're trying to take care of their current customers first. So if you go to a bank that you don't have a relationship with, you're going to get in the back of the queue. It's just kind of how it is right now. So I know that doesn't sound promising for you all, but yet you do need to try to find a bank that, and honestly, at this point, you talk about making multiple applications. You're going to, if you can find that opportunity, that would be remarkable, because right now, just find a bank that will actually take your application. And preferably you go to the bank that you have a relationship with, but if you don't have that relationship, then you need to you'll need to work with the bank, any bank that you can engage that's willing to allow you to make application. We do have a list. Actually, I think what we have was the NAB had put together a list of banks that you can put in your zip code, and it'll pull up. What does it do, Francisca?
Actually, it's not NAV. Okay, so on our website, there's a link for NAV, which is a calculator that helps small businesses owners calculate how much they want.
Okay, that's what that was.
And
right.
then SBA link is actually the one that's providing the eligible PPP lenders.
Are they doing that? That's the one that does it based on the zip code?
Zip code, correct.
Okay, all right. Sorry for my confusion, folks. You know, there's too much information and too little brain cells left to process. So, but I wanted to make sure that, and the rest of that question is,
okay, so the second part of it, it says also Intuit has informed that they will participate in PPP. Are they authorized? Do you want to take that part first?
yeah, I don't know that, I know what they're doing. They have, they're adapting their accounting systems to be able to allow you to provide the documentations that you're going to need for the application process. So that much I know they're working on. I'm not familiar with them actually participating as a lender. I can look that up and verify that. But right now, what I do know is that they have worked with their software engineers and said, look, we need to be able to find a way to make it a more simple process to document. So not just make the application, but be able to document evidence that you qualified behind the application itself. And so I know that they have been working on that. I haven't seen the end product yet. So.
Okay, and then the next part of it is, do we put into the PPP numbers just payroll, or do we add rent and utilities?
Well, the PPP, you can, the PPP's primary purpose was payroll. The forgiveness part of it is only going to be payroll expense. So the EIDL allowed you to, and this was where the conversation came up about, well, can I do both? If I were doing this, I would apply all of my payroll expenses to the PPP, which has a forgiveness component to it, and then I would put my other expenses in the EIDL. And if you've already sort of applied differently, you can amend that before you actually accept the proceeds. So.
Okay. And then how long will it take for EIDL to be approved and dispersed, the timeline?
Yeah, that's where we're talking a little bit. When they first started, they said it would be 3 to 4 weeks. And this is my guess. This is Joe Harper's guess. This is actually not somebody else saying what it's going to be. I would think it could be considerably longer, just because look at where we are right now, and we still haven't worked through the bugs that are caught up in this or the capacity issue. Like I said, we're onboarding capacity as quickly as we can, but that takes time. And until we can increase just the sheer people power and the processing capabilities, we're going to have this, it's going to begin to choke. It's going to backlog. So 5 to 6 weeks wouldn't be something that unreasonable, which is why you need to focus as much as you can on the gap component of that. Particularly that first 10,000 that has a potential for being a grant that you can apply for. Right, that's about the last or second to last question that you click on the application process.
Okay, then it looks like I have one here for TWC. How much time do we have from a layoff to file for unemployment?
So I don't think there's not a time limit to do that. The longer it takes to file, the longer it will be before you actually start getting a payment. But there is no time limit. I know people are experiencing long delays in being able to get their applications in either online or on the phone. I do want you to know the Workforce Commission is working as hard as they can to improve their capacity and to be able to take more calls and take more online applications. But they're going as quickly as they can.
Okay, will PPP help us bring back employees we had laid off prior to Corona event, for example, in early January?
That's a good question. I believe that the funds will only be applied to the time from the point of the president's declaration. So anything prior to the president's declaration may not be eligible. Doesn't mean you shouldn't ask for it, but don't be surprised if they come back and say it's not eligible.
Okay, what can we do if the average salary from last year is not sufficient to cover the people who have on the board, who we have on the board? We have been hiring new staff this year. Joe? Joe?
Yes.
Okay, there it goes. You got muted.
Oh,
Okay, can you start again? Sorry.
all right. Technology is wonderful. That question was asked earlier this morning prior to our getting into this session. And the challenge is that when you look at the annual uh, uh, payroll for last year, or for the annual payroll for 2019, it's considerably different when you look into the first quarter of this 2020. What you need to do if your payroll is significantly higher and you're trying to make sure that gets counted into the average is, if you haven't filed your 941 for the first quarter of this year, then you probably do need to go ahead and file that so you have an evidence to the fact of what your actual costs are. And then you need to sit down with the banker and explain how your payroll increased, when did it increase, that sort of thing, and that it had the potential to be sustainable prior to the event over time. So they're not going to allow you to keep increasing payrolls. I mean, you can't just keep adding people to it, but they will take a look at what was the gap, the difference between the average of last year and the average of this year. But to document that, you're going to have that first quarter 941 filed.
If I've defaulted on student loans, am I disqualified from applying for these loans?
Yes, there's just no way around that. That is well, let's say, did you default within the last 7 years? Then yes. There seems to be some discussion that if the default happened prior to 7 years ago, that there's the potential that it would not impact you. But right now, the way I read the rules is that if you have defaulted or even delinquent on any uh, federal government loan program, then you are ineligible.
Okay, looks like we have another one here for TWC. Is there a program or resource that you would recommend for small business that are considering layoffs? Could you inform us on the shared work program, and then could this be used in conjunction with the PPP?
So this is Paul. I'll take that. We have staff that work with employers, whether they're ramping up or ramping down. Our business services consultants can help you work through issues with a layoff. Just help you kind of get through that process, help you understand what you need, as an employer, need to do, and try to ensure that we do the best job we can for the people that are going to be impacted by that layoff. The shared work program is one where the Workforce Commission offers the employer, if they need to reduce hours for their employees to avoid a layoff, and I believe the reduction in hours is between 10 and 40, as much as 10%, but no more than 40% reduction in hours. Then unemployment will kick in for those employees and compensate them for the hours that they're not getting. And I did hear yesterday that yes, that can be used in conjunction with the PPP program.
Okay, the EIDL had 10,000 quick disbursement. Does that take 5 to 6 weeks?
No, the original plan there was that it would take about 3 days. I would say we're probably going to need to double that, but it's still relatively quick.
Okay, I think you already answered this one. Joe, if I have defaulted on student loans, am I disqualified from applying to these loans? I understand that there is potential of getting hacked when applying for the loans.
Well, cybersecurity is a big issue, and you need to be aware of that. Most of the programs that we're working with has taken every opportunity to address that as well. So, but it's a very real potential, and I believe we put it on the website that about the warning, and I believe it's on some of our email signature lines to just kind of remind you that about some of the scams and things that are out there. So don't get yourself trapped in. And there's a lot of bad actors that are trying to find a way to get into your money and to hack in. We know that most of us are trying to take all the precautions that we can to prevent that. But I don't think you can prevent it 100%. But the application itself is, I think the federal government has actually taken those necessary steps to protect your information there. And then the application at the bank, each institution, I know they're going to do, most of them want to do it online, so there is still that risk, but that's going to be tied to each institution's cybersecurity risk that they try to address.
Okay. What do you know about the 7A loan real estate?
Well, what we know is that from, and that question probably needs to be defined a little better, because certain types, like investor real estate, is not eligible. But I need to know more. There's not enough. That question doesn't give me enough information to say how does real estate play a role. Because if you are a rental company that you rent houses and that's your business, then you may qualify for some lost revenue as a result. Well, you won't qualify for the revenue, but you'll qualify for your expenses to be covered that can't be covered through the lost revenue. So, but that's a much more difficult question to answer than just in a broad term like that. I would invite that person to send me that, to email me that question directly with more specifics, so that I can do a little bit of research.
Okay, I think as of right now, I don't have any other questions unless anybody else has any others.
Are we good? Perfect. Paul and Kara, thank you so much for participating with us today. And as we get more questions related, we'll try to forward those on to you all, so you can either provide answers or give us some direction on where we can go get the answers, that sort of thing. But we really appreciate your participation. Thank the rest of you all for giving up your time this morning to hear our updates and to try to address questions. It's all going to take just a little bit of time, and we just encourage everybody to try to be patient with us as we go through the process as well.
1 second. So with regards to the EIDL, you're going to need to contact the SBA phone number that I have listed, the 1-800 number, or email them. I wouldn't suggest reapplying. I would just try contacting to check on the status. Do you know anything else, Joe?
Yeah, if you applied prior to the new portal being uploaded, you will need to reapply if you want to apply for the $10,000 potential forgivable grant. That you'll need to reapply into the new system. But you have your previous loan number, so it's not bumping you out. Just when you reapply, use the loan number or case number that was assigned to you when you reapply. But that'll allow you then to get through that form where you can get down and check the box that says you want to apply for the $10,000 advanced loan.
Okay. I think that may be it, unless anybody else has any other questions.
So I asked a question, not answered. What was, so did I leave that?
That was the one, Joe.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll work on that for you. Sorry. Yeah.
And we just want to say thank you for your leadership in this area as we go through this. This has been really great details that it's great for even Paul and I to listen in, to be able to share the details that you guys just reported to the other people that we're helping. And please reach out to us if you have any questions that we can help beyond this scope. We absolutely want to.
Dr. Ryan, did you happen to put your email address where they can send the questions to?
Absolutely.
And then
Sorry
also, we are working on Thursday to try to figure out what topic we're going to be covering. But as soon as we know that, we will list the webinar on our website, on our social media, so you guys can register too. Okay, I think that's it.
All right. Thank you all. See you Thursday.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.